10 days after he arrived in Melbourne to defend his Australian Open title, Novak Djokovic is set to be deported. Just over 1 hour ago, the full bench of the federal court dismissed his application to overturn the cancellation of his visa by the federal government. It's a decision that's made headlines around the world and sparked fury in Djokovic's home country, Serbia. Shortly after the decision was handed down, Serbian Australians and other supporters demonstrated outside the court in Melbourne. With less than 24 hours until the first serve at the Australian Open, it's as messy as it can be. Tennis Australia is continuing to hunker down, with the reputation of its premier event and its own handling of it under international scrutiny. And despite days of court hearings, we're still no closer to knowing why Novak Djokovic was issued a visa in the first place. Amy Bainbridge begins our coverage.
Away from centre court and tied up in court, it's the last place Novak Djokovic wanted to be on the eve of the Australian Open. The superstar's fate rested solely in the hands of the full bench of the federal court. This evening, it delivered the decision.
The orders of the court are: 1, the amended application be dismissed with costs.
I'm extremely disappointed with the court ruling to dismiss my application for judicial review of the minister's decision to cancel my visa, which means I cannot stay in Australia and participate in the Australian Open.
The Migration Act requires him to be deported from Australia as soon as reasonably practicable.
The court of public opinion was central to the case. The government's key reason for cancelling the star's visa for a second time was that Novak Djokovic's presence here could foster anti-vax sentiment and incite protests. Lawyers for the world number one argued the immigration minister misinterpreted media reports about the star's views on vaccination. Not a single line of evidence in the material before the minister provided any foundation whatsoever for the proposition. He also said officials hadn't asked Djokovic directly about his views. The minister's lawyer, Stephen Lloyd, argued it wasn't just media reports that demonstrated Djokovic's attitude towards vaccination. That he's still unvaccinated reflects a choice on his part to remain unvaccinated when he could be vaccinated. Mr Lloyd said rightly or wrongly the star is perceived as endorsing anti-vaccination views.
If he's not going to get vaccinated, he needs to do what everyone else is doing and stay home.
It is not rational at all.
All this mucking around with the lawyers in court cases, I think he should be out.
Djokovic won't have the chance to prove his greatness again by winning this year's Australian Open. Amy Bainbridge, ABC News, Melbourne.
Just before the federal court handed down its decision, Tennis Australia finally released the playing schedule for the Open. Novak Djokovic was listed to appear at Rod Laver Arena tomorrow night. That won't be happening now. Tom Maddox joins us from Melbourne Park. Tom, what's the backup plan?
Juanita, Novak Djokovic will now be replaced by a so-called lucky loser. And ironically, that lucky loser will play a different Serbian player in Miomir Kecmanovic, the 22-year-old who's ranked 78th in the world. But Juanita, that lucky loser will be drawn from the top 4 ranked players who made it to the final round of the qualifying for the Australian Open. But it's a scenario now where in a prime-time slot on Rod Laver Arena following Ashley Barty's match, we'll have a lowly ranked or middle-ranked Serbian player playing a player that failed to make it through the qualifying round. So we could have a reshuffling of the order. We could have some unhappy ticket holders and an unhappy broadcaster. But what does this mean for the rest of the tournament itself without the 9-time champion, the defending champion in Novak Djokovic? It could possibly open the door now for a first-time champion. Players like Daniil Medvedev, Alexander Zverev and Stefanos Tsitsipas are rising stars of the game and would have to be in contention given Novak Djokovic's absence. And of course, Juanita, Rafael Nadal has also made it to Melbourne, despite recovering earlier last year from a foot injury and most recently COVID-19. So there are some question marks over how Rafa will go in the sun here at Melbourne Park over, say, a 5-set match. Juanita?
Tom Maddox reporting there from Melbourne.